Hey everyone, I was at the Toronto International Film Festival because I live here in Toronto and I like movies, which ironically is the name of one of the films I didn't get to see at the fest. And while TIFF didn't accredit me for press for the second year in a row, thanks TIFF, for reasons I can't comprehend, I still got to see a lot of movies, so take that TIFF press team. You didn't stop me. But on a more serious note, I would like to thank TIFF for their support and encouragement of young movie lovers and students like me to attend TIFF, because without it, I wouldn't have gotten the festival experience I got. For one, they offered a cheaper price membership to those under 25, giving me the chance to secure tickets to the film I most wanted to see, with a cost, of course, but it certainly was cheaper than the flights these American YouTubers had to take to get here. Plus, going to TIFF became part of my class commute, so as I commuted to school, on the way, I would go to TIFF. But the real reason I was able to go to all these movies, which I normally wouldn't be able to go to, was because TIFF did this awesome thing where they sold rush passes to those under 25 for only $29. This meant that if we were willing to put in the time to wait in line, and depending on ticket availability, we could get into almost any screening for free. Here's all the tickets I got for movies by rushing, and some of them ended up being my favorites of the festival. I saw 20 movies at TIFF, which is a lot, but I could have seen even more, but let's get into what I did see. Day 1. First up was the opening night gala screening of The Swimmers at the Princess of Wales Theatre. The rush line for this wasn't crazy at all, and that was because there were still a ton of tickets on sale, because since it was the opening night film, they were asking at least $130 for this thing. And look, Tiff, I know that you know we love movies, but $130 for a film coming out on Netflix? Let's be real. So we got in and got a quick peek at the cast and crew, which included the real-life sisters who swam at the 2016 Rio Olympics. All in all, it was a nice opening night film, certainly less cringe than Dear Evan Hansen, and while it's quite cheesy in its writing and editing at points, some of the shots were really powerful and got me a little emotional. 6 out of 10. Next, we went right back to Princess of Wales for the world premiere of On the Come Up. TIFF had offered free tickets to its U25 members, so since we were already planning on seeing it, me and my brother scooped them up and were able to lounge for a second. The director of it was there, and it was her first movie after being the star of films like Love and Basketball, but man did it show. The writing was really cliche, but not in a way that was boring at least. But the editing at points was just god-awful. I don't know why they edited it that way. But Divine Joy Randolph is great. I got to see her after the show, and the rap battles were pretty well written thanks to Rhapsody, who my brother got to shake hands with, even though you can't see it in this footage. So overall, 5 out of 10 movie. The rest of the cast and crew included Lil Yachty and Method Man, who came out during the Q&A, but it really looked like Yachty did not want to be there, and when we went around to the back, he was also the first one to be gone. Day 2. It was the opening Friday where things were really getting busy, but in the morning it wasn't so bad. I started off the day with Baby Ruby with Naomi Merlant and Kit Harington, who are actually there along with the director. The film is fine. It uses a lot of cool horror techniques and beats to create a scary look at infanticide and the struggles of being a new mother. Kit Harington was not good. Naomi was better, but she's done so much better than this. And again, some of the editing choices were strange and really didn't have anything to do with what I think the film was going for, and it didn't really grip me that much, so 5 out of 10. On a funnier note, they sat me on a reserved seat, so I was very tempted to steal the little thing that indicated it was reserved. Next, I went to see Patrick and the Whale because I thought a nature doc would help me chill out. It did not. This was one of the most boring and self-indulgent films I have ever seen, and the director really didn't seem like he gave a shit, and the Patrick in the movie is a really weird person and uninteresting as a subject of a documentary which really should be focused on the whales. It even had Alexander Nanu, who directed Collective, which is a great documentary, as the film's executive producer. But why was this film made? It was only 76 minutes, but I kept checking my phone so I could leave. 3 out of 10. Next, I went to make sure that my brother Jordan knew we were lining up for the next movie I Like Movies at Scotiabank Theatre, which I gotta say is definitely my least favorite rush line. There's so many gaps and other random people standing around, it's impossible to know where your place in line is. I waited there for about an hour, and then my brother came around 45 minutes into it, just for us to be told there would be no more rush tickets, so we booked it over to the Princess of Wales to try and see Brother, which was playing 15 minutes after. We were one of the last in line a line of over 20, but we were literally the last 2 people not let into the theater, which was quite disappointing. So after that, we were waiting at Roy Thompson Hall for Butcher's Crossing for about 2.5 hours. And was it worth it? No, not really. Nick Cage is great in this, and some of the cinematography is very nice, but also some weird editing moments, and I really don't like the actor who was the protagonist, who was in The Woman in the Window. But by the end, I understood what the film was going for.
I'm alright with twisted stories. It wasn't that twisted.
And it never really bored me, so 6 out of 10. They brought out the cast and crew for a Q&A, but I thought Nick Cage wasn't even there, so since my brother was supposed to go home, we left. But Nick Cage was there. I just didn't even hear his name or recognize him without his beard. So instead, we just booked it to the train station, only for the train we were trying to make to be canceled because it turns out someone got hit by a train. So they had to cancel that, forcing our dad to pick us up downtown at around 12:30, or else we would have been home past 2 a.m. at the earliest. So yeah, not a great end to the day, and honestly, at that point, I was starting to lose my mind, and it was only day 2. Day 3, I had to stay at home for my acting class, so I was already going to be in a rush to get to the rush lines. Plus, I had my friend Eric in town, so me and him just decided to stay at home and chill, watch Atlanta, and eat pizza. We were originally going to try and rush Black Ice, and it went on to win the People's Choice Doc, but I mean, come on, we were in Toronto. It was about hockey. What else was going to win? I already bought a weekend train pass, so I decided to head downtown to scout the rush lines for The Menu and The Fabelmans, which was also premiering. And I saw 1 to 2 hours of waiting with no result in sight, so I decided to head to Scotiabank to rush Sisu, a Midnight Madness film that played the previous night. But it turns out they weren't doing rush for it, so I saw The Daughter's Rage, a Nicaraguan film which was well made with well executed themes of coming of age as a woman and loss of innocence. Unfortunately, while the acting, especially from the little girl, was well done, I was never really too invested in the story to care, and limited budget clearly held this film back. 5 out of 10. Next, I got right back in line to see what else I could rush, and the only thing left was the short film program, so I decided to watch a few of those. The best 2 were this animated father and son adventure called Ice Merchants, 7 out of 10. Then a very social media inspired short film about female masturbation, which was also quite funny and profound in the same way, so 7 out of 10. And then I also saw a Get Out like film, but made in Toronto, which was really not new in any way, 4 out of 10. Day 4. As a good Christian boy, I went to church that morning, and it's also become my part-time job to teach the Sunday morning youth lessons. So after doing that, I headed downtown for a 3:30 showing of Chevalier, because when I first got there, I thought it'd be very tough to get into the screening considering the line. But then I realized that most of them were just here for Harry Styles and My Policeman. Silly me. Chevalier had one of the most badass opening scenes I had seen in a while, and while I thought I'd be seeing one of the best films of the festival, it kind of revealed itself to be a weird combination of a restrained fictional account of his life that was nonetheless entertaining, but never became as awesome as the first scene. 6 out of 10. Got to see Kelvin Harrison Jr. there for a little bit, but then I had to leave early to try to get in line for The Eternal Daughter, directed by Joanna Hogg. I missed the first few minutes of it because of some rush confusion, but while this may have been a bit boring for me at some points, the craft on display was the best I had seen so far in the festival, and I stayed just for the scenes with Tilda Swinton, who proves that she's just one of the best to ever do it. They were also there for the Q&A, and I stayed for the entire thing because it's really interesting to learn how Joanna writes and how Tilda and her improvise most of the dialogue together and how spontaneous but personal the film ended up being. I never got a good image of Tilda because of the lighting. Tipped by a light box, you probably should fix that. But it was still a good film. 6 out of 10. Then I went to the rush line for The Good Nurse, which was pretty long, but slowly. Some people bought tickets from others, and some handed them out for free, so I was able to get in. Eddie Redmayne, Jessica Chastain, the writer Christy Wilson Cairns, who I saw her film Last Night in Soho last year, and director Tobias Lindholm all came out for a brief Q&A before the movie, which was cool, but also the only people who did a Q&A before the movie. I liked how Tobias approached the film technically, but the story really felt like something I had seen before, and the direction never truly enhanced it. Chastain is good, and Redmayne tries his best to be disturbing, but overall creates a character who really isn't human at all, so it's kind of hard to be fascinated by him. The ending and combined with the music in the end were really underwhelming, making this 6 out of 10. It was trying way too hard to make you feel something, but I think we all did get emotional when the director brought out the woman who actually reported the murders. Now that's a real hero. Day 5. It was Monday, and on Mondays I have 2 classes, including a 4-hour film class where we're supposed to watch films in them, and we ended up watching Black Panther for our first ever class. 6 out of 10 movie, by the way. Michael B. Jordan is easily heads and shoulders above this. Then I had ultimate practice, and afterwards I made my way over to Roy Thompson Hall for a 9 o'clock showing of The Sun. This was the first film I got tickets for. Cameron Bailey, the CEO of TIFF, was there. Florian Zeller introduced Hugh, who was the only cast member there. And I guess the rest ran away because after watching that ending, anyone would have run away from the theater. The film is fine throughout, has strong acting across the board, and even Zen McGrath, who clearly isn't a talented enough actor to emotionally express himself as he should, is consistently stilted, so at least it makes him a character. At least Florian seemed like he was trying to do something with it. But then again, having Hugh as the lead character, a talented actor in a role that really does fit him, only really leads the movie astray, as his story of teenage mental health only kind of exposed Zeller's lack of understanding of young people, and his futile attempts at writing one were completely exposed in the end, making a movie I really never want to see again. And man, when a character mentions that they went to Toronto, the crowd went nuts. But 5 seconds later, we were all reminded this film was about suicide. Way to go, Florian. I'm sure you enjoyed people cheering at your depressing climax. 6 out of 10. Hey, there's Hugh. Day 6. Again, being the week, I had 2 classes, and after a tiring TIFF weekend along with some long classes on Monday, I decided I would only rush one film despite my desire to see All Quiet on the Western Front that night. Instead, I only rushed the Canadian premiere of Broker. Having not done any schoolwork up to then, due to my constant screenings at TIFF, I took some of my hour and a half in the rush line to do so. Koreeda and Song Kang-ho were there to introduce the film, which was very cool, and I think Song is the man I liked seeing the most during the whole festival. Seeing him on screen for the rest of the movie was also a delight because he and this cast make this crime road trip movie unexpectedly delightful. I think I smiled and laughed during this movie more than anything else I saw at the festival, but that still didn't stop the drama from being impactful. The music was overbearing in parts, while it was more enjoyable than other soundtracks I had listened to during the festival. It has some of the best scenes of the year, both comedically and dramatically, and for the few days I only saw one film, this was definitely the best one. 8 out of 10. Day 7. This was the day of heavy hitters. After having my screenwriting class in the morning, I headed over to the Princess of Wales Theater to meet my friend Declan for our first movie of the day, Women Talking. And oh boy, they certainly did that. Being lighthearted about this film is not out of place though. It does release that tension well, and while none of the comedic moments worked for me, I could have done with the stressful Uncut Gems experience, I think the subject matter needed it. The cast is brilliant, the dialogue haunting but beautiful, the cutting at some points was quite powerful, other times felt really forced. The color grading exists, I don't get why people are ragging on it so much, and though the night scenes do look better, I think the cinematography overall was really good. The music is memorable at points, but Hilda really needed to put that cello away. I think it's a flawed film, but its unabashed empathy sent my mind to places that really connected with me, so 8 out of 10. Sarah Pauly, a local Torontonian, stayed for a Q&A as she has with all of her screenings, and it was cool to hear her thoughts on this color grading because of course some asshole asked her about it, but also about adapting and filming this story, so it was really cool. Declan grabbed some ice cream before we went right back for Princess of Wales for Triangle of Sadness. Now, out of all the films I saw, this was probably the one that got the most laughs out of its audience. Personally, while I enjoyed the first 2 parts, the third act didn't really work for me until the end, and even then I didn't know what to make of it. Its social satire is explicit, but also seems to lack a true theme, resulting in a repetitive film, which does feel exhausted in most of its third act. The second act on the boat works very well, but mainly because it's Jackass on a ship with a pretentious art film mask, and I guess that's enough to win the Palme d'Or. 7 out of 10. Lastly, that night we headed to Roy Thompson Hall to catch what's now the People's Choice winning The Fabelmans. And like my fellow festival goer, I did vote for this film. Cheese in this film, while consistent and even borderline annoying at points, doesn't stop the charm from being off the fucking scale. People thought this would be Spielberg's Roma or Belfast, but I really thought it was his Lady Bird. It's funny and dramatic, mixed in with a high schooler's life, who's also starting to learn about his love of movies, and with a 2.5-hour runtime that whizzed by, and a lack of flaws, and an ending that may live on in infamy, especially in film school, I think we have another Spielberg classic, and maybe a second best picture winner. 8 out of 10. Day 8. After watching 3 movies the day before, I thought, well, time for 3 more. I headed from my 11:30 class to Princess of Wales to see Causeway. I wasn't one of the first rush people, so we were admitted after the first scene or two. This movie was really about the relationship between Brian Tyree Henry and Jennifer Lawrence, though, more than anything else, even though I kind of thought it was going to be about PTSD. And it is, but it's mainly about the relationship between the two of them. They give really restrained and realistic performances, In key scenes, I was kind of heart-wrenched, but the build up to those scenes and the lack of exploring this relationship and their character held it back a lot for me. 6 out of 10. Then I got in line for The Prisoner's Daughter, and unexpectedly the cast and crew were there for a Q&A. But I had to leave, but first I got some footage and a photo. The movie itself is really filled to the brim with cliches, and the melodrama did not work for me. And while Brian Cox plays the character well, the rest of the cast isn't nearly as good. 4 out of 10. The last movie of the day was one of my most anticipated, which was Decision to Leave, which also ended up being my biggest letdown of the fest. Don't get me wrong, Park Chan-wook is undoubtedly one of the most interesting and exciting directors working in film today, and this movie does prove he can find new and interesting ways to shoot, zoom, and cover his scenes. However, the scenes in this movie are at surface level, just a two-part detective story where the first half is cool but familiar, and the second half just drags for me. The second half really focuses on the relationship between the detective and the woman he encounters, but their relationship was not very interesting to me, and the visual storytelling and acting both felt like they lacked focus on the relationship, even though it seemed to be the focus of the whole movie for a lot of people. We'll watch it again, but honestly it could be worse on a second watch. 7 out of 10. Day 9. I decided to skip the festival this day considering I had to work most of the day and I had a going away party for a friend and mentor, so I only watched Do Revenge on my phone.
Get real.
It's cliche in a Gen Z way, so I'm not mad at it, and I do love Austin Abrams and Maya Hawke. The twists work, but I didn't care. Sorry. 5 out of 10. Day 10. This was my last day going to films and I had my acting class again in the morning, which I was able to leave early because my prof approved of me going to see Glass Onion at the free TTC screening. I thought it was going to be packed there, but it was literally the easiest screening to get into the whole festival. We just walked through security and got to sit in the orchestra because I guess people who take the train don't go to TIFF. I brought my brother for this last day and we predicted who the killers would be. Spoiler, there is a killer in the movie. Sorry, Ryan didn't subvert your expectations by doing a murder mystery without someone dying. My brother got it right and I got it half right. You'll find out when you see the film. But this is a very fun film. It flies through in the second half, but does take some time to get going. But this is just as good as the first, if a little less intellectual and glitzier, but there's not much wrong with that. 7 out of 10. Next, we watched Maru. We rushed this after we saw The Line for Women Talking, which I did want to watch again, but ended up seeing this film, and it was the best non-special presentation film I saw the whole festival. It's a New Zealand film, which looks at the police brutality that they had laid upon the Maori community. You get enough space in the first third or so to get the knowledge of these characters in the setting, and while it's not vastly profound or entertaining, once the police thriller kicks in, it really takes you on an entertaining journey that has stunning dramatic conclusion. The audience didn't even clap, but that's not because it was bad, it was because the film really needed to be digested personally, and beginning your film with the views and versions of events as presented here are not endorsed by the New Zealand police is pretty fucking badass. 7 out of 10. Then it was time for my most anticipated movie of the whole festival, The Banshees of Inisherin, and I found out why it had such a high Metacritic score. There's really not a whole lot of flaws with this film. The whole ensemble is excellent. My favorite, Barry Keoghan, who I wanted to scream for when he came on screen, is very good, and Colin Farrell bodies this lead performance. And if Triangle of Sadness was the funniest film I saw at the festival, I saw this was probably a close second. But then the second half becomes a lot more dramatic and definitely darker, and it will probably take a second watch for me to figure out how I think about it, but the only dramatic part that really does work for me for sure is the last two shots. This may have been a funniest ever Manchester by the Sea effect on rewatch, but for now I'm kind of mixed on the second half while adoring the first. 8 out of 10. And with that, I was done my TIFF expedition. While I saw 4 better movies last year and only half as many, including 3 in person, the experience of attending the full in-person festival was quite enjoyable and memorable. Always having exciting movies to check out each day when I was done class or free on weekends was awesome. I'm very grateful for having the Rush Pass as it allowed me to see 14 of these movies essentially for free, not including the first opening night film, I guess, which would cost $130. So if you're a student around Toronto or even a young person who can reach Toronto for a day or two, I suggest trying to get a Rush Pass and rush things that you are excited about. It could require hours of advancement. I know for films like The Whale, people wait over 5.5 hours only for a couple people to get in. But try to gauge the demand for your films that you're trying to see and plan accordingly. Maybe invest in some ticket packages with a friend like I did, and secure the films you deem essential and just enjoy the experience. I know I did. And hey TIFF, you know, after watching this video, which I know you did, maybe you'll consider me for press next year. They probably fucking won't. Why the fuck did I even say that?